Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut an halter neck Victorian corset. If you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern, and I've gone ahead to mark my basic measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, under bust, waist, and my top length is 5 inches away from my waistline. So after that, I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, which is about 7 inches, and I'll come down by 1 inch. Now I'll go ahead to draw my shoulder slope from that part. Place my ruler and I'm going to connect to the shoulder point. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to find my armhole or chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll go ahead to draw a straight line at that point, and I will connect that line as my chest line. I'll place my tape back and I will divide my armhole into 2, come in by ½ inch, and at the chest line I will mark my bust circumference divided by 4, which is 8.3. 33 divided by 4, I have 8.3. Connect from the half part of my armhole to the chest line and connect upwards. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to basically mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple divided by 2, or my bust band divided by 2, is 3.5, which is 7 divided by 2, 3.5, and I'll draw a straight line. So after drawing this straight line, I realized that the style lines of this particular corset is a little curvy, like slanty, so I went ahead to remark that. So at the lower part of my pattern, I will be marking 2.5 inches. After marking the 2.5 inches, I'll go ahead to connect. Now I'll go ahead to remark my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides. So if you're plus size, you can go ahead and use 1.5 inches on both sides for your dart intake. So after I'm done marking this, I'll just go ahead to reconnect my dart lines upwards, and I'll go ahead to connect to my under bust this way. So after I'm done connecting, I'm going to place my curved rule. I'm going to connect from the bust down to the under bust, and I will also go ahead to repeat this at the other side of my pattern this way. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to mark this out so that it's going to be very visible for you to see. So after I'm done marking this out, we're going to go ahead to work on the upper part of my pattern. So I'll place my tape and I'll mark 1.5 inches above my chest line, because this is where I want my pattern to start. That is the cup or the upper part of my pattern, and I'll rule a line. Mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5 inches, and I'm going to connect at that point. So after I'm done connecting, I'll go ahead to mark out my neckline. So for this neckline, I'm going to be using a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches. So after marking my basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, I'm going to place and I will connect. So after I'm done connecting, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to mark my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides of my pattern, and I will connect to the under bust. After I'm done connecting, I'm going to use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So after I'm done connecting, we'll move up to the next step, and I'm going to go ahead to insert my body measurement. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and I'll be adding my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and I will mark, replace, add my sewing allowance. So at the waist, I'll be taking out 4 inches from my original waistline, which is 28 minus 4. I have 24 divided by 4, I have 6. I'll mark, measure the dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. At the lower part, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and I will replace my sewing allowance also. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to use my curved rule, and I'm going to connect from the bust to the under bust to the waist, and from the waist down to my top length. So after I'm done connecting, I'll go ahead and use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. So after I'm done outlining this, we're going to go ahead to work on the lower part. So on the lower part of this pattern, I'll go up by 2 inches, and from that point I'm going to go ahead to connect it all the way to the front part this way, and I'm going to use my marker to mark it out to make it visible for you to see. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead to create another style line on my pattern, because this is a Victorian corset. It's either you have multiple darts or you're going to have multiple style lines, and I'll go ahead to label this pattern. So after that, we'll go ahead to work on the upper part of this pattern. So after that, I'm going to connect the neckline of my pattern, and I'll connect it down to my chest line this way. So after I'm done doing that, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline to make it visible for you to see. So the next step I'm going to take now is to work on the halter neck pattern. So from my neckline, I'll come down by 2 inches. You can also come down by 1 inch or 1.5 inches. It totally depends on what you want to use, but 2 inches is always okay. So now I'll just go ahead to connect my pattern, and I'll just go ahead to draw out the style line we have on the neckline, which you'll be cutting it out into different pieces that you'll be using to connect or create the halter neckline for this pattern. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your comments at the comment section. After I'm done cutting, this is what I have on my pattern. So you can use the upper part as a guide and just cut it into different pieces. So for the back pattern, this is what I have already. Just like we marked out the front pattern, is the same way I marked out my back pattern. So now I'm going to start up with marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead to mark this all the way to the lower part of my pattern this way. After I'm done marking, I'm just going to go ahead and place my ruler, and I'm going to draw a straight line connecting all the way down. Now I'll be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of my waistline, and I'm going to connect it upwards. And I'll also go ahead to connect the other side. And after I'm done connecting, I'm going to go ahead to connect to the lower part of my pattern. So after I'm done connecting this way, I'll be marking my bust circumference divided by 4 on this part, and after that I'll add my sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead and move over to the waist. You can also insert your under bust measurement. So the measurement I use for the waistline, which you snatched 4 inches away at the front, that is what you'll be using for the back. So for the top length, you will mark your hip circumference divided by 4, add your sewing allowance, and also connect. So now I'll go up by 2 inches just like we did for the front pattern, but now I'll be taking it all the way straight. So you can decide to do this for your back, or you can just connect it down to the to the lacing bar area. So now the next step I'll be taking is to go ahead and mark my neckline. So for the back, I'll be using a basic neckline of 3 by 1.5 inches. And I'll go ahead to place my curved rule, and I will connect it. After I'm done connecting this, I'll go ahead and mark that same 2 inches that I marked on the front pattern here, and I'm going to connect it all the way to the back or to the chest line of my pattern. So after I'm done connecting this, I'll just go ahead to mark it out to make it more visible for you to see. So now you want to start creating the lacing bar area of your corset, and I'll be using 1.5 inches. You can use 2 inches. It just totally depends on what you want to have at the back of your dress. And after this, I'll just make a mark to indicate that that is the lacing bar area, and I'll add another style line to this, which I'll go ahead to label my pattern and outline the chest line. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead to connect it all the way up, and I will be creating that stylish look or effect that created the halter neck pattern at the upper part of this dress. So now I'll go ahead and I will cut out my pattern. So while cutting out this part, I'm just going to leave here a bit because I'll be using it to create like a loop at the back of this pattern. I'll be adding like a little loop at the back of this pattern so that it's going to connect to the other part of my pattern, and so that the neckline won't be too short to also meet the other side. So with this, I've come to the end of today's tutorial, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your question at the comment section.